Welcome to Who Wrote That Up For You, a daily podcast that shines a light on the American justice system and its role in empowering the powerful to take from you. The justice system is the only branch of your government where an individual rather than the collective can make the system act for you. It puts power in the individual's hands, but it's broken and being used against you at a time when you need it most.
Well, and welcome to Who Wrote That Up For You. We are live. It is Friday, September 23rd, 2022. I'm Sonia Ebron, a co-founder at Courtroom 5.
And I'm Deborah Sloan, the other co founder at Courtroom 5.
We have a fantastic show for you today. In a few moments, we will hear from Professor Jesse McCoy. He is a clinical professor at law and the supervising attorney for Duke's Civil Justice Clinic. A little further in the show, we will hear from Sally Ingles. She's with the South Carolina Legal Services, and so we'll hear about some of the ways they use to get the word out, the information and awareness to self-represented litigants in South Carolina. Before we do that, though, Deborah, what is our issue of the day? What's on your mind today?
Well, once a week, we cover a general topic or try to cover a general topic of things that make pro se litigants lose in court because we want them to do better, of course. And how do we know stuff like this? Because we've lost a lot in court and we've learned our lesson and we've watched other people flounder. And so these are things that a lawyer won't pretty much won't tell you, but they may be critical to winning or losing a case. So today, one way pro se litigants lose is not bringing a court reporter with them at a hearing. A court reporter pretty much keeps an official record of what happens in court, and that helps preserve issues for appeal. But it also kind of has an effect on the behavior of a judge or a lawyer who you're in a hearing with. Um, at the end of a hearing, they tell their part of the story, and you tell your part of the story if no court reporter is there. So it's always better to just bring an official court reporter, a neutral person, to keep a record of what happened.
I think I could talk about this all day long. Let me just riff for a minute. I mean, we've been blogging at Courtroom 5 for years on various topics and our experiences. And I think sometimes we'll repeat the lesson that we want to share with people, but I don't think there's anything we've talked about more than the need to have a court reporter with you when you are in front of a judge. What you said about folks giving their side of the story is so important. And you literally get a different judge. And we've seen it so many times. You get a different judge when there's a court reporter in the room and when there's not. It's just that plain. And from my perspective, the reason you won't hear a lot of lawyers talking about that is they don't need to bring a court reporter. What's said is said, and there's a fairly fair hearing when there's lawyers involved. But somehow when there are pro se litigants involved, you get a different judge. You just get a different judge. And so, yeah, we recommend, and we certainly always do these days, whenever we have to be in front of a judge, there's a court reporter there with the little typewriter and taking down every word. And folks seem to bring their best selves, I'll say, to the hearing when there's a little typewriter there and everything being recorded. So it's
Yeah,
very, very
maybe.
important.
I'm sorry. Maybe in one of these sessions we can share some court reporter stories.
Yeah, that
'Cause
we've
we
got
got quite a
those as
few.
well. Good enough, good enough. Well, you all know that Who Wrote That Up For You is sponsored by Courtroom 5. At Courtroom 5, we believe the courts belong to the people, in particular to the people who use them. And we, the people, are coming to claim our courts. So if you are in court without a lawyer, or if you need to sue someone and can't afford a lawyer to represent you, get yourself over to Courtroom 5, try our tools, training for free. And increasingly, you will find actual legal services from lawyers there as well on an as needed basis. And so we invite you to visit courtroom5.com and see if it can provide some assistance for you. At this time, it is my great pleasure to bring on to the show Professor Jesse McCoy. He is, again, professor of clinical practice at Duke University School of Law and the supervising attorney for the Civil Justice Clinic here. Professor, welcome to the show.
I mean, it's always a pleasure to see you.
Always a pleasure to see you as well. And I should share with everybody, you are not just here in Durham. You are here from Durham. You are a homeboy. I was born in Durham as well. And so it's always good to rep the hometown and to see such brilliance, represented here. So thank you so much for joining us. Let me first ask you, whenever I have a sort of a big head like yours in front of me, I love to just chat about some very deep subjects. And I've got some for you there. But I just want to ask you, what is the Civil Justice Clinic and what do you all do there?
Clinic is one of many clinics at our clinic is specifically designed for people who can't afford counsel. We handle a variety of cases known for our eviction defense, prosecuting housing conditions cases, and handling cases for the Office of Administrative Hearings after being unfairly for allegations of neglect. We are essentially law school students who want to learn how to litigate our supervision.
Got you. And I'm hearing a bit of audio blip there, so let's slow it down just a little bit so that we can capture as much of what you have to say. Let me ask you very plainly, and I rarely have a chance to ask a law professor this as plainly, but I know how smart you are on these topics. Professor, what is the purpose of the law?
Law always has two purposes. Of course, is the provision of some degree of society so that we know what the parameters of the more likely, particularly for those, it serves more so as a gateway to the ability to access justice, and that we have mechanisms that will allow these things work. Because when folks in routes, they don't come to consult with you to see if you're going to but you're going to be held accountable for it.
Got you. And again, I heard a good bit of that. If I understood you, the law helps us just understand what the parameters are of our behavior, right? And you can apply consequences, but it pretty much structures some order in the society and make sure that we all know how to behave with each other, that we know how the rules operate. How did you, from Durham, how did you develop your interest in the law? What is it about that purpose that brought you to it?
Surprisingly, I started off wanting the people who knew nothing about, knew nothing, never seen anybody who looks like me, and I wanted to blaze a trail. And took chemistry, and chemistry told me otherwise. The interest that I had in law actually really bad run-in with police, where the police officer made me feel like I wasn't worthy, and I hadn't even done it. And I just remember the embarrassment that I had, and despite the fact that I hadn't done anything. When I grow up, I want to be one of those police officers who feel like I feel in this law school initially, and became a criminal defense cross-examined police officer. And everything else just kind of spun from there. Quickly is a lot of people who unfortunately, the criminal side of things, also in the civil side, that were going on, one being housing, which I view as, and so because we know that it's not been great to marginalized communities or maintaining of housing, my place to get involved in trying my people.
And one of the areas that you mentioned that your students work in the civil justice clinic is eviction law. We've got a tremendous crisis here in North Carolina and around the country around evictions. What are some of the challenges in dealing with eviction law here in North Carolina and elsewhere? If you want to speak to that.
So there are several, and I think COVID a lot. The main thing is even of a bigger issue of income and housing inequality. And so when we look at times that the people take these things, all of your stuff's being removed, and you're usually through a fault of something else. I lost my job, medical illness, my car transportation isn't as it would be if it was in New York or something like that. Things are the major issues, and unfortunately, the way those are not legal defenses. So it is important, one, for the bases for eviction are in North Carolina. How to approach these scenarios and being removed and having the put on your credit report and on your record down the road.
Got it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Professor, we know you're at Duke Law, and I'm sharing that contact information on the screen here, but where else can people reach you online?
So if you'll want to see me on Twitter, J. Hamilton McCoy II.
Fantastic. We will share that in the show notes. Professor, thank you so much for your brilliance and your work, your heart around these issues, and we'll have you back on the show very soon. It's great to see you.
It's a pleasure.
All right, fantastic. Deborah, who won yesterday's challenge, and what do you have teed up for us today?
All right, yesterday's quiz was the question was, in a criminal trial, the prosecution has the burden of proof. To win, they must prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the standard. So in a civil trial, the plaintiff has the burden of proof. What standard is used to prove a case? And the winner was Xavier M. The answer is to win in a civil trial, the plaintiff must prove their case by a preponderance of the evidence. That means that the standard is that they must convince a judge or jury that it's more likely than not, that means like 51%, that the defendant is liable for the harm done to the plaintiff.
Congratulations to Xavier there. That is fantastic. I thought that one might be a little hard, but glad that we got
Yep,
a good answer
yep.
there. Fantastic. All right, what is today's quiz?
Today's quiz. Kelsey filed suit against Dr. Fig Newton for medical malpractice. Dr. Fig Newton filed a motion to dismiss, asserting, among other things, that the court did not have subject matter jurisdiction. What did he mean by that?
Oh,
What did
that
he
is
mean by the court did not have subject matter jurisdiction? If you want to participate in the quiz, send your responses to quiz@courtroom5.com.
That's going to be fun to see. That's a bit of a curveball there.
Yeah.
Dr. Fig Newton stays in trouble though. What is with him, right? He is always getting sued or having to be in court. You got to be careful out there, Dr. Fig Newton. That is that's great. At any rate, it's my pleasure to now bring on to who wrote that up for you, Sally Ingles with the South Carolina Legal Services. Welcome to the show, Sally.
Thanks, y'all. Thank you so much for having me on. When I heard about this podcast, I just thought it was so great. There's obviously a huge need with pro se litigants, and I heard the last guest talking about eviction. We actually had a report come out in South Carolina from the South Carolina Access to Justice Commission that 96.5% of litigants in eviction are pro se. So there's a huge need for this podcast and these sorts of resources out there. So I'm just so happy to be here.
I'm so happy you could join us. And Sally, tell us about the services available at South Carolina Legal Services and
Yes.
just what your territory is. Where are those
Yeah.
services available?
So, South Carolina Legal Services, we're a nonprofit civil law firm. So, we provide free services to low income South Carolinians. So that's our main services, and we provide services on a wide variety of civil legal topics, from education to housing law to family law to taxes to just about anything you can think of. We probably have a unit for it. But another thing that we really focus on is not just providing those services and advertising those services, but also putting general information out there to the public. So, not just here's our services, come apply for our services, but creating resources and really just trying to educate the population, because not everybody qualifies for our services and not everybody might find out about our services in time, but we still want to reach people and get that information out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you have a sense of what the qualification is like? I know there's some income limits for free legal aid.
Yeah, so typically it's 125% of the poverty line, I believe. But there are special scenarios where you can qualify based on other characteristics. So typically it's below a certain income level, but again, there are some special circumstances with, like, the elder population or veterans, victims of domestic violence, where those income levels can be waived as a qualification.
That's fantastic because there is a large middle class
Mhm.
access to justice crisis where people might make a few dollars more than
Right.
125% of the poverty line, but still can't afford full representation. And so it's great that you all are doing such a good job of getting information out about how to represent yourself and just some of the legal standards. I know you all have developed some, I guess, expertise, some facility for social media to sort of spread the word and make people more aware of the services. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. That's actually my wheelhouse at Legal Services as communications manager. I run all of our social media pages. And like I said, something that's become a focus for me is not just advertising our services, but really getting information out there for people. So, the average person in the United States spends over 2 hours on social media. So, our goal is to meet people where they already are with information. So, we recently did a feature on our social media about wage garnishment. What is it? When can people legally do it, and when do people threaten to do it but don't actually have the legal ability to do it, right? Because a debt collector might tell you that they're going to garnish your wages, but they can't actually do that, unless it's the IRS or student loan debt or something. But that's a whole other bird. We have an upcoming series we'll be doing on social media about tenants' rights. So, going back to that huge need we have with eviction right now, we're doing a whole series on social media about what is fit and habitable, because the law says landlord has to keep your space fit and habitable. But there's a lot of gray area there. And sometimes it's obvious what's not fit and habitable. If the roof is caving in, that's probably not fit and habitable. But if you have a heating unit, but it doesn't keep it as hot as you would like it, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not fit and habitable. So, I don't have a law background as a communications and marketing person. I actually taught high school for 7 years before this position. So maybe it's a little bit the teacher in me still, that I feel like there's just so much information like that might be obvious to attorneys. If you presented 100 scenarios to an attorney about fit and habitable, they could probably say that counts, that doesn't count. I have one follow-up question here. But the average person, myself included, before I did this series that we'll be doing on social media, wouldn't have been able to tell you what fit and habitable is. So I try to find those little pockets of information and what our lawyers do to try to get that out there to the public, just to keep everybody informed.
That's extraordinary. And I can imagine if I were a tenant having to deal with eviction, this would be very helpful information to run across. You mentioned that eviction is a big issue there in South Carolina. Are there some other big issues that you feel a need to just increase awareness around?
Yeah, so I think consumer issues, debt collectors, scammers, they prey on such vulnerable populations. And that's another area that we have a lot of pro se litigants in South Carolina. That, it's a tough, the legal field in general is tough for people to navigate. That's something that, y'all say on your podcast is it's not necessarily set up for the average person to navigate.
Yeah.
And so when you bring money in with consumer issues, that complicates the situation more. And it also might make people feel less comfortable reaching out for help because money can be a touchy issue. So that's one I focus on a lot, just because I feel like a lot of people can relate to that.
Hmm.
But we've created online classrooms for eviction, foreclosure, debt collection, education law, getting IEPs and 504s, understanding what schools' responsibilities are. It's hard for me to pinpoint what I
Yeah.
think is a need because we cover such a wide need in our firm.
I'm so happy to hear that. I'm because legal is such a big issue. So many issues need to be handled in court there. Well, let me ask that one of the things that you all are particularly good at is reaching people outside your specific territory using YouTube.
Mhm.
That's a hard nut to crack. YouTube is, the second biggest search engine in the world
Right.
is YouTube, and so it's very, very smart to use that platform. But not everybody is smart about using it. What have you learned, and just what put you on YouTube?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
you
I can,
share your
I can
information.
I can give the listeners a little bit of a hack of how we grew our YouTube channel. So we're just a few subscribers short of 1,500 subscribers on YouTube,
Hmm.
which especially for a regional nonprofit, that's a big
It
milestone for
is.
us. And like you said, it's a huge search engine tool that people use. And so basically, what we started doing was just creating content, putting it on there. I did some research and training on YouTube SEO, using tags, what to put in the title, how much to put in your description. But the hack that I was referencing is, since COVID, everybody has really shifted to having the capabilities to do online trainings and online webinars. So one thing that we did is with all of those recordings from webinars that we already had because we were recording them for people who couldn't be there, we upload those to our YouTube channel. And so it's we're able to
Wonderful.
double that content. And then what's really been helpful with that is a weekly webinar series we do called Level Up Law. We have over 100 episodes, and there's just so many topics that webinar has covered that we've been able to upload to YouTube. And so, we might upload a webinar that only 56 people watch on our YouTube channel, and maybe we only have 3 live. But then we get that one comment that's like, thank you so much. I have not been able to find any information from this. And that person might be in California or Virginia, and maybe we can't offer them our services because they're not in our state. But we were still able to give them information when they needed it and they were having trouble finding it. And then we've had some episodes and some videos that have just really taken off. And then it's a little bit of the network effects. Once you get over 500 and 1,000, people just start subscribing because they think everybody else must think these people are great. So I'm going to subscribe too. So it's been fun to watch it really grow from there.
That is extraordinary. That's so smart, as I said, and just such a valuable service
Thank
that,
you.
that you're able to reach people nationwide with that. Sally, where can we find that information? I'll put your website online here, but if you want to speak further to precisely where to find this information and where can we find you all online?
Yeah, so we are on Instagram and Twitter at SC Legal. And then we're on Facebook at facebook.com/SC Legal. We're also on LinkedIn. And then our YouTube channel is youtube.com/South Carolina Legal Services.
Fantastic. We'll put all of that in the show notes. This is fantastic information, Sally. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing the great
Yeah.
work you all are doing at South Carolina Legal
Thank
Services. And
you. Thank y'all again for having me on. And thank you for what you're doing for pro se litigants.
you bet. We'll see you again.
Thanks, y'all.
I mean, just fantastic information that is being produced for this huge problem of people in court without a lawyer. I'm just so excited to hear from Professor McCoy about the work they're doing here in Durham, but also just reaching a larger group of people with the eviction services they offer and just the information that they're producing there at Duke Law. And I mean, it's extraordinary that a nonprofit legal services organization like Sally's is able to reach so many people with that valuable information. I'm heartened to hear all this good news.
Exactly. And there's kind of a theme here today about primarily about housing, but there's always a bigger issue. And the bigger issue here is the value of unbroken courts, how important it is, how important housing is, and how important it is to have access to a court that's not broken so that we can address these housing issues. So I'm really appreciative of our guest speakers today on that particular topic.
Yeah, both of them. Absolutely. Fantastic. That's all we've got for you today. Deborah and I will take a break over the weekend and we will see you again on Monday. Thanks for joining us on Who Wrote That Up For You.
Are you feeling beleaguered, angry, or afraid, as if things are spinning out of control and you're powerless to stop them? It's easy to just let things slide and hope they don't get worse. But they often do get worse. The thing is, you're not powerless. Our courts belong to us, and their purpose is to give power to the powerless. Don't let your grievances pile up without redressing them. You can handle this in court. Or, if someone takes you to court, you can take them to school.